Well, that's interesting. So, okay. The weird thing is now I've got Ustream in 2 things and Google Plus in none. Hopefully you can all see me now. I see the light is finally on the camera. Hello, everyone. Give me 1 more minute while I just try to get one more thing going. Google Plus is not cooperating with me. Don't you love technology? Okay, Google tells me... Oh, wait, maybe it came back now. It said, we're having trouble reaching our servers. Please try again later. But now a window came up. Let's see. Okay, that's not helpful, though. Oh, this is interesting. Apparently, it won't let me connect to Google Hangouts on Air because my Flash player is not as... I don't know. I've upgraded the Flash player as much as this machine can take. One more minute. Let me try one more thing. Alright. Okay. Hello. And now let us officially start this fantastic extravaganza, which is the slow surrender. Wait, where's the book? I of course have visual aids. This is the great thing about a video chat, is that I can actually show you things. My name is Cecilia Tan. I am a writer, and my new book that has just come out is called Slow Surrender. It is a BDSM billionaire book. That's a genre now, and I will get it out of the way right now. It's because of 50 Shades of Grey that this genre has become just such a thing, and many people out there who have read 50 Shades, and whether they enjoyed it or not, are looking for another book like it or another thing that will satisfy their craving, and many publishers are looking to do exactly that. And my history is that I am a BDSM erotica author, and I have been writing kinky, dominance and submission stories for about 21, 22 years. My first book, actually I have a copy of it here. My first book was self-published in 1992. It was called Telepaths Don't Need Safe Words. This is it. It's, as you'll see, extremely thin And the original first printing of this was 100 copies that I borrowed the photocopying of at my then day job in book publishing at a book publisher here in Boston, and it was stapled on the spine because I bought a big stapler and literally stapled them by hand, and that was the world of 1992. I sold them all in one weekend. I went to a science fiction convention. The book is about two telepathic lovers who go to a science fiction, in a science fictional setting, who go to a BDSM play party, and they, hijinks ensue. So the thing is only 40 pages long. It's actually 3 stories in here. I'll show you a really funny thing, which is a picture of Corwin when he was a college student. When you're self-publishing a book, you can put things in it like a picture of your boyfriend. That's an actual, what do you call it, building in Boston, and that was when elf punk was a big deal in the early 90s, so that's Corwin. So this little thing, I had to self-publish it because there was not a place I could go to publish it. The places that published any form of sort of kinky fiction at the time were basically, we were down to, Penthouse Variations, as it was called, which only wanted a very specific style of erotic story. They basically we want 2,500 words, no longer, and 2 people meet, they have sex. And in the case of Variations, 2 people meet, they have kinky sex, and that's it. No plot, no characterization, no nothing. And they didn't like science fiction, of course. And I'm like, well, where's the fun in that? I wanted to put a kidnapping in and a rescue scene and a, this, that, and the other. So, obviously, it made a lot more sense to me to self-publish than to, it couldn't. Science fiction publishers wouldn't publish it, obviously, because they were very weary of erotic content. And at the time, romance publishers even didn't do, the paranormal romance didn't exist yet. There was no mixing of the peanut butter and the chocolate when it came to science, sort of fantastic elements and erotic elements. About the closest you got was there were some time travel romances, but it was 1992. It was a long time ago. So the kind of cool thing was, so I self-published this little thing, and then that kind of launched a career that by 1998 I was publishing with HarperCollins, which is one of the, I was going to say the big 6 publishers, but actually they're down to the big 5 now because there was a merger. Penguin and Random merged, and now we have the Random Penguin. They're not actually calling it that, but that's what everyone in publishing calls it. So the Random Penguin. I thought that had great potential for a funny logo, but I don't know. I guess multinational corporations don't take this all much more seriously than we do. So anyway, also let me show you Slow Surrender. Wait, how did I? We're in my office, by the way. So just so you set the scene here, my office is in the attic of a Victorian house that was built in 1887. So it's all wood and very charming and so forth, and needs a lot of upkeep, which is why I'm really hoping that this book will sell pretty well. But it's very large is one of its, I won't say drawbacks, but it's got the fact that things can hide in this house very easily. Also, I think gremlins live here with us. Literally just put a copy of the book aside. So I was like, oh wait, there it is. See, I told you. Here it is, the paperback of Slow Surrender. Let's see if I can get the light. So it's got this really, really pink spine, and this sort of pearl theme. The publisher's idea was, they're like, well, 50 Shades of Grey had the tie, and so forth, and that book is so about the sort of male power and so forth. And a lot of people, though, who've read it have kind of raised a lot of the same questions that they did about Twilight, of course, which is that isn't this kind of like borderline abusive and so forth. And I said, in real life, BDSM is not meant to actually be some kind of cover for abuse or some kind of therapy for getting over your problems or whatnot. It's a real sexuality that real people do, and it doesn't just happen in the fantasy world of a book. So in my book, the idea is that it is as much a female empowerment story, even though Karina, the main character, is the submissive in the story, but without going into too much detail, I mean, the idea is that when you surrender yourself to someone, for the sake of love, that's an extremely empowering thing. And so I guess the idea is that the pearls are sort of the girl power version of the gray tie. And I never did get to talk to the cover designer, but that's my take on the interpretation of this cover. So they gave me these pretty pearls. So, all right, so now I have to tell you what kind of cool thing I'm doing. With the pearl idea, I thought, okay, I want to have a little something to give away to people, like who meet me while I'm on tour and whatnot like that. So I got Mardi Gras beads that are pearls, and they have a little medallion on the bottom of them, so that if you want to personalize it, first of all, it gives me a place to autograph it, whatnot like that. And then I got these little stickers made. These are Moo stickers. They're so much fun. 4 designs that... I'll put them a little closer to the camera. That say, one of them says "I surrender." 2 of them are the cover in different variations, and one of them is the cover of the upcoming book, which is called "Slow Seduction." Now, I'll tell you something interesting about these titles. The publisher and I brainstormed together to come up with these titles. My original title for this was "Face the Strange." Back when I had just proposed them a single book. I did not think I was going to be writing a trilogy, but I was quickly disabused of this notion when they said, no, everything has to be a trilogy now. It's sort of like after The Lord of the Rings, every high fantasy for the longest time had to be a trilogy. Thanks to 50 Shades of Grey, everything has to be a trilogy. And I will tell you, one of the, I solicited questions from my social media for this chat, and I have them written down and printed out and whatnot, and one of my poor readers, her reply was literally just the words, "Oh my God, cliffhanger," and then like the eyeballs, made in an emoticon. Yes, the book does end in a cliffhanger. It is the first book of 3, and it is, I shouldn't blame this on the publisher exactly, but they did make me do it. I did really intend to write just one book. On the other hand, there is this sort of DS relationship going on between the author and the readers, where it's like, yes, I am torturing you. Yes, I am, but I promise it will be worth it. I will make it all worth it in the end. Anyway, yes, it's all a big exercise in delayed gratification. And the thing is, the book itself is kind of a big exercise in delayed gratification. I mean, one of the things that James, who is our dominant hero, does a lot is teases our heroine and, makes her wait for things and makes her earn things and, whatnot. And that's what makes it fun. So, at least if you're me. So I had a lot of fun with that, but it was actually really good, I thought, to have the room of 3 books to develop their characters. Really, the category romances with, one single paperback is not a lot of space to really develop the characters. You get up from, the book begins when they meet, and then you get up to the point where they are really, really in love, and then that's it. And then you're just supposed to imagine the whole rest of their lives as, happily ever after, right? So, and it's sort of interesting. Of course, they have to earn it. There's always some challenges in their way, so forth and things. With over 3 books, I could, first of all, have a lot more challenges in their way, and I could have more interactions between them and other characters besides each other. And if it were just the one book, Karina's mother would exist entirely just as a voice on the phone, like in Peanuts, wah, 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 wah. And instead, by book 3, you actually get to meet her and you get to find out a little bit more about her, and maybe Karina isn't quite as true, Karina, of course, every daughter has an idea of what her mother is thinking and what her mother is like, and, so forth. And Karina is at that age where she's trying to get out of grad school and, whatnot like that, and is not really interested in listening to anything her mother says anymore, And, of course, her mother is a little, has her quirks and, whatnot like that. But there are reasons to listen to her mother, too. And, of course, by book 3, she actually gets some screen time and whatnot. Somebody who I didn't expect to get as much screen time as she did is in Slow Surrender. Karina has a roommate named Becky, who is Chinese American and is also a grad student, and so forth. And originally it was just like I don't know. At first I was going to have Karina live alone, and I thought, oh no, I'll have her have this roommate, and the roommate will be the one who, whenever she has to have a conversation with somebody other than our hero, she'll have there'll be somebody, kind of a thing. And instead of it being somebody who like she would call on the phone, which would be very non-visual and non-tactile, I said, well, let's give her a roommate and whatnot. The roommate has a cat and so forth. So there's little details that get to run through it. And Becky is a geek girl. She lives her entire life through the internet. So she's so she thinks she knows everything because she's read it all on the internet, but she hasn't done everything, whereas here's Karina, who's going out and, meeting wild rich men and having wild sex with them in their limousines. Well, no, okay, she's only meeting one man like that and having wild sex with one guy in his limousine. But, but to Becky, she's like, oh my God, you're living this fantastic life. And, and so Becky gets to be the Hermione in this book, where it's like every time something happens, she can be like, oh, well, I read in Hogwarts a history. She can be like, well, I read on the internet that whatever. So she's, she's the Oracle character who just gets, anytime Karina doesn't know something, she can be like, oh, well, I Googled that, and, and there's one point where Karina actually says to her, please do not Google BDSM right now, like I've got to get to sleep because I have a class in the morning, or, whatever. And she's like, please do not stay up all night researching this for me, that kind of stuff. So, so Becky turned out to be a lot more important than I realized she was going to be, and she gets more important as time goes on too. So she gets a little more screen time, gets to do something other than just be the advice, in future books. And that was another fun thing about it being 3 books, is that if it were just that first book, that would just been all Becky ever got to do, and so it's fun. Let me see. Okay, so I'm going to some of the questions that folks have sent me. By the way, if you are watching on Ustream, I see some of you are. I can see your little chats here. There's the social stream here. You can leave me questions by typing in there. I see Laura Antoniou says, I see you. So I see you back. And a couple of other people. You can type in the social stream box on Ustream. And if you're seeing, there's 2 tabs. One says videos, one says social stream. If you click social stream, there's like a little chat log, and you should be able to type in there. Turn social off, though, if you don't want what you type at me to appear in your Twitter feed, and things like that. On the other hand, if you want to share it with Twitter, that's great. I'm very easy to find in the social media, by the way. If you just came to me through Facebook or whatever, I'm also on Twitter. I'm also on Tumblr. Becky's not so far from me, in a lot of ways. They say, oh, which character is most like you? Like, all my characters are me, basically. So, in one way or another. They say, write what you know. Well, okay, that's what I do. Some of them are just a little more hidden me than others. So, anyway, okay, oh my God, cliffhanger. Answered that one. Someone asked me in my Tumblr ask box, or in my Tumblr reply box, what made you decide to make James an artist rather than a businessman? So now here's where I have to give you the warning, which is that it's very hard to talk about this book without giving spoilers of what happens in the book. The basic setup, of course, is that these 2 people meet and hijinks ensue. So that's not a surprise. Not going to shock any of you to know that this is a romance, and it's an erotic romance, and so it's a series of escalating erotic scenes, as it should be. And I have an analogy that I give sometimes. I say, well, writing an erotic romance is a lot like writing a kung fu movie. You have to, that what people go to see a kung fu movie for is for the fantastic fight scenes, right? And that every fight scene has to be different, and they have to be interesting, and they have to be as good as the fight scenes in previously seen movies. But they also have to do something new, and they have to, you're thinking to yourself, but human beings only have a certain number of limbs, and, there's kind of a limit on how many ways they can interact, isn't there? No, of course not. So Jackie Chan, just uses, like, the furniture and, things in the set to make it really interesting. That's James, actually, in this book. James, as a dom, doesn't feel like he necessarily needs a dungeon, or, a red room of pain, or, whatever. He can dominate anywhere with anything. So they're in the back of a car, they're in a restroom, they're in a library, they're in an art museum. He's always got some way. And sometimes, of course, he has brought special toys hidden in his pocket, or, so forth and so on. But he, a lot of it is just what he says and what he, how he uses his voice, what he asks her to do, her challenges with, complying with his erotic instructions, etc. So that's what's going on. So writing an erotic romance is like writing a kung fu movie, and also the fight scenes, they have to get bigger, and of course the biggest one is at the end. Well, it's the same with an erotic romance. It's an escalating series, where every sex scene is more important than the previous one, is more intense than the previous one, where the characters are getting more connected. And one of my criticisms, one of the things I didn't enjoy that much about 50 Shades of Grey is that it seems to me like all the kinky stuff is in the beginning, and then it just kind of disappears. They moved steadily away from it. In fact, I feel like they marched steadily away from it toward just, we are now going to have a happy life as, man and wife, and have kids and all that kind of thing. As if you just stop being kinky once you get married, or you stop being kinky once you have kids. Most people I know in the BDSM community, that is not the case. And maybe you have to be a little more circumspect about it, because you don't want the kids to be getting into equipment or ideas that maybe they're not ready for. But, people don't, like, in the same way people don't just stop having sex, for the most part, just because they procreated. So the thing about okay, what was the question? Right, why did I decide to be an artist instead of a businessman? So far from, this is a good thing I wrote these questions down, right? So, spoilers, etc. Okay, so James's identity is very mysterious to Karina when she first meets him. And all she knows is that he's clearly rich, but she figures he's probably something boring, like he's an oil salesman or insurance, or something where you make a lot of money, but and that his only thing that's interesting about him is that he is this, is that he's this closet kinkster. What she eventually finds out is that he's got some kind of ideas about why he keeps his secrets and so forth, and then it turns out that he is, among the many things she discovered, among the many things she discovers is that he's an artist. And it's like, so he's got this artistic side. Of course, our heroine is an art history grad student. So that, all of a sudden she's like, why is this guy so knowledgeable about art? And it turns out, of course, he's been to art school, and so forth. And so, now, people ask me, why did I make Karina a grad student in art history? And I said, well, first of all, remember, this book is supposed to be the book you read after you read 50 Shades of Grey. You're supposed to be like, okay, now what? So here's the book that actually gives you the BDSM relationship dynamic and so forth. And I thought, well, okay, so what's-her-face is supposed to be in college in the previous one. Well, okay, I'll make mine a grad student. It's like, how can we take it to 11, right? Ours goes to 11, to make a Spinal Tap reference in each case, so... and I'm like, all right, I'm not going to just make him a mysterious billionaire. I'm going to make him a mysterious billionaire who also is an artist, but doesn't want to be judged as an artist. He wants to be judged on his artistic merits, not on the fact that he's this billionaire. So, so he has this mysterious, identity. So he's a glass artist. He makes glass sculpture and glass, formed glass art installations of different kinds. And she finds this out at one point when he invites her to take part in a performance art piece involving the art and whatnot. But yeah, many people were like, why did you make her a grad student in art history? And I was basically like, they have to talk about something besides sex. It's really simple. It's like, okay, your characters must have something to talk about besides the food they're eating, the sex they're having, the sex they're about to have, the sex that they want to have, and their childhoods. It's like there must be something else for them to talk about. And so I picked art. And what's funny is off the top of my head, when I was writing the proposal, basically, I threw in that she's an expert in pre-Raphaelite art. The funny thing is I'm not an expert in pre-Raphaelite art. I know I like pre-Raphaelite art, but I did not know that much about it. And, they say, write what you know. Well, this meant that I kind of had to go and try to make myself into a miniature expert on pre-Raphaelite art. So, fortunately I have the internet, which was very helpful. And then I got some books and, so forth. And, of course, now I'm following a Tumblr that's like, fuck yeah, pre-Raphaelite art. And, actually, I think it's not quite the title, but, so it's so interesting. All of a sudden, I discovered there's all these other people out there who are really, really into the pre-Raphaelites. And, so... Okay, great. I didn't really know if it was going to come off as obscure or, which would have been fine. Oh, she's studying this really obscure thing, or if it was going to be like a hip thing. And I don't know. It would be really cool as far as I'm concerned if the Pre-Raphaelites now become like this super hip thing. Book 2 has much, much more about the Pre-Raphaelites, but by the way, I'm drinking iced tea. It's very humid here today. I'm in the Boston area, and it's been pretty nice, very like in the 70s, dry and sunny and whatnot. And today it was only like 70 degrees this morning, but it was so humid. It was like I think I'm gonna make iced tea instead of hot tea today, even though the temperature wasn't that hot. So. Oh hey, somebody just said, "Oh, is that how it works?" Yes, that's how it works, Julian. So, Julian Griffith, hello. I have to distinguish you from Julian, my brother, who is not, as far as I can tell, in the chat, but we'll see. This is linking to my Facebook and whatever. My whole family follows me, of course, and so they'll get to see where I'm speaking, where I'm going, whatnot. Oh, speaking of which, I have tour dates to talk about. So most of the book promotion these days goes on the internet. I'm doing a blog tour with two other authors, Jodi Ellen Milpas and Cece Gibbs, who both have erotic books out from my publisher, and so they had us each answer all these questions, and then they've rearranged them as little interviews, and they're being posted on blogs all over the internet. It's kind of cool, but here, look, I printed it out so that I would remember. I will be at the following places over the next month. So the Geeky Kink event, New England, is going to be August 16th through the 18th. Geeky Kink is it's a convention, so it's a weekend-long thing where it's like all the science fiction people and all the BDSM people. Where that crossover of the Venn diagram is, it's just the people right in the center. I went to the one in New Jersey 2 years ago where I was the perv of honor, and I'm the perv of honor at this one. It's like guest of honor, only I like the term perv of honor better. It was just some of the most fun I ever had. I mean, it's hardly like work. I mean, really. Let's face it, writing is hardly like work in a lot of ways. I'm just like, oh no, I get to sit around and play with my imaginary friends all day. Okay, yes, writing is work. I'm not diminishing it, but it is, like, hey, I get to do work that I'm actually suited to doing. And yes, and the results are incredibly satisfying when you finish a book. But anyway, Geeky Kink is in Warwick, August 16th through the 18th, and you have to buy your tickets in advance. I believe that the tickets, ticket sales end tomorrow, maybe, or the 10th, maybe. So tomorrow or Saturday. I'm not sure if by the 10th they mean it cuts off then at midnight tomorrow. So buy them in. You can Google it, you'll find it. Buy them in advance, and because it's being a private event, there are no tickets allowed at the door, so that, I don't know, random yahoos can't just show up and be like, oh, we came to see some girls with tits, or, whatever. Bear, True Stories of Sex and Romance, September 2nd at the Middle East. As far as I can tell, it's sort of like The Moth, if you've heard that show on NPR, except that it's all about sex, love, and desire. And the host is a fellow named Jefferson who runs these open readings and, things. He does them in New York, Boston, and DC, and then he does a queer version. Bear, I guess, is more or less heterosexual, but then he does a queer version called Slip. So, right? I think I have that right. So, anyway, it's always the first Monday of the month at the Middle East here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So that'll be my first time doing that. I haven't decided what I'm going to read yet, but I have plenty of true life stories that I have no shortage of true life stories. People don't usually ask me where do you get your ideas from because they know that they will get an earful. Some writers write about what they wish might happen in their real lives. I do actual hands-on BDSM research, yes, all for you. Okay. Well, really, it's for me, but it gives me plenty of material. And the last one is I will be in San Francisco Saturday, September 14th, for Writers with Drinks, which if you've never attended a Writers with Drinks, it's grand fun. Charlie Jane Anders, who is the host and who has run it for many years, always puts together an eclectic mix of writers from different genres, different styles, whatnot. And I've read at Writers with Drinks before, and it's always fantastic. I mean, you go to some readings where you don't really, I'll confess that you don't always pay that much attention to the other readers while you're sort of thinking about your own thing, right? And no, this one you're really like, wow, these guys are really great. So it's fun. But someone in my little social stream here says, "You're doing better, yay!" Yes, it should be fun. Pre-Raphaelites, yes. Yes, such a hardship to have to study the Pre-Raphaelites. All right, a little story about Book 2, which I won't save until Book 2's chat. Book 2 is coming out in January, by the way. Book 2, Karina gets a job at a major British museum for the summer because a major Pre-Raphaelite exhibition is going on. And when I was writing Slow Surrender, actually she meets the curator who hires her to do this in Book 1. So there's this little conversation about art, of course, with this person that James introduces her to, and so forth, and which turns into this sort of summer job. At that time when I wrote that, and he said, we have this major exhibition of the Pre-Raphaelites coming up, why don't you send me your resume? At that time, I made that up, completely made it up. And then at one point, I was Googling around for information on the Pre-Raphaelites. I was wondering which paintings were in which museums. At one point I wanted to say, well, okay, what was it possible that she had seen here in the U.S., or has she forced to study it all out of books? The hilarious thing is that in September, I went to England to present at a romance conference, actually, and at the International Association for the Study of Popular Romance, or YASPR, and I actually presented partly on 50 Shades of Grey and other BDSM-related romances, and I was like, I have one day in London between, my transfer from the airport to York is where the conference was. And I said, okay, what's one thing I can do one day in London? I said, let's see what's at the Tate and see what I can see, in one day. Guess what? Huge Pre-Raphaelite exhibition that was just opening, and was the first time that these hundreds of works had all been brought together in a single place. And that exhibition is now on tour in the U.S. I think it was just in Washington, D.C. I'm not sure if it's done there and it's now moving to the next place or what, but yeah, pretty amazing. Yeah, how lucky can I be? And this happens to me though over and over again, where I make something up in a book and then I find out it's real. And whether it's that it is real and therefore I'm sort of divining it that, this is a real thing and somehow my brain connects to it, or whether it really is that I create things and then the world around me changes, I don't know. This is like Schrodinger's cat, right? And if you look in the box, there's no way to find out the answer, so I don't know. I don't know how these things happen, but I got to see this gigantic exhibition, and I was like, okay, well now I've seen the exhibition that Karina will be a tour guide in Book 2. Check it out! So this thing that I had invented and was going to have to just make up from scratch, all of a sudden I had a real setting for. So everything else about museums and whatnot that's in the book is completely made up. There are the curators are not real. The outrageous scenes which occur are not real. Sorry. Some of the New York art museums are involved in Book 1 also. But all right, how about I read a little bit from the book? I'm going to say one more thing before I do that, though. So some of you out there have read the book or are planning to read the book, and are many of you are fans of James. I want you to know that James has written a treatise on sex, love, and desire called The Art of Love, and he would like to send it to you, but the price for receiving this special bonus, it's basically a 10-page sex scene from his point of view, which is his. He wouldn't just write a sex scene from his point of view. He had to write a whole treatise on sex, love, and desire. You have to trade me for it. So what you trade me is if you review the book on Amazon or Goodreads or one of those kinds of places, library thing, wherever, Barnes & Noble, review it online, make a screen capture of the review, and email me that. I email you back the thing. You can also if you see the book on sale somewhere, take a picture and email me the picture. Take a picture of your copy of the book with your cat. I don't know if any of you saw my Facebook page that had the pictures of when I opened the box, of course, the cats all came to see you, and I kept trying to set the books up, like, oh, make a little diorama, and, take a picture, and every time I did it, a different cat got in the picture, 3 cats, and, was setting up 3 different poses, and, so one of them's like, oh, I was like looking at it like this, and one of them, like, Pooh is lying across, they have to get involved, right? So picture of the book of yours or your Kindle, or, whatever, with the book cover, with your pet. Does not have to be a cat, can be any pet. Just please don't get your, I don't know, your book, if you have the kind of bird that likes to pull books apart, whatever, please don't destroy your book. I'm getting this free story from James. A selfie of yourself with the book, or with your pearls, because, there's the whole pearl theme, right? Or a screen cap of you wrecking the book to your friends in any social media. I don't care. Twitter, Tumblr. Does anyone use MySpace anymore? I mean, whatever. Saying Slow Surrender is awesome, or, I just read the most amazing book, or I can't wait to read this book. Whatever. Send me screen capture or photo to me. Actually, I made a list. I can put it up. Getty James Scene. Send me any of the following things. And there's my email address. I am ctan.writer@gmail.com. You can also just Google me, and my email address will come up easily. ctan.writer@gmail.com, and I will send you that. If you already did this for the ebook edition, and so you want to do it again, the second prize after the James Scene, if you've already received it, is I have made a special ebook preview of the first 4 chapters of the next book. So, if you're really good, I might read a little bit from that in a little while. I should probably read from book 1 first, though. Yes, it was in York. I am jealous. Yes. Here's one of the things. People are like, why did you start writing scholarly papers about romance? And I'm like, well, besides the fact that, I don't know, I couldn't help myself, the conferences tend to be in these, like, fantastic places, like York. York was fantastic. And the next year's Jasper conference is going to be in Greece. And I'm like, can I come up with an excuse to go to Greece? I've never been to Greece. And I'm not sure I'm going to pull that one off, but York was definitely worth the trip. And, I managed to get a little academic travel grant, and, which helped defray the costs. And another friend was like, oh, stay with me. My university's going to pay for my room, share the room with me. So, I managed to do it without putting too big a dent in my credit card debt. All right. I said I was going to read from the book. See, Slow Surrender. I was saying before about the title. I think I really jinxed myself with these titles. These books were the longest, slowest books I've ever had taken writing romance novels. I mean, I've written over a dozen romance novels now, and could not believe how slow to develop some of these were. And I don't mean just like, oh, I had to sit and think for a week before I could move on to the next scene. I mean, this was like, while writing it, I was typing slower. Now, maybe some of that has to do with the fact that I've been somewhat anemic for the last 18 months or so. You can probably see it in the video. I'm sure you can. I have these sort of bags under my eyes, these sort of circles and, whatnot. And I look like a vampire has essentially sucked the blood out of me. That's because it's like a vampire has sucked all the blood out of me. Or the blood that's in there basically has no oxygen in it and, almost no iron in it. So I'm having a bout of anemia right now, but, and it's weird. It's really weird. It's the weirdest, affliction I've ever had, where just energy just suddenly kaboom. Not only do you feel tired, it's like you can't actually even move your muscles. It's like, this is kind of confusing. Where just don't, legs just won't go up the stairs, or won't go down the stairs, or can't, just lying in bed, can't sit up. It's like that. It's like, I think I'll just lie here and read Twitter then until I muster the willpower to force myself to sit up. But yeah, anemia is weird. So. Alright, I'm going to read a little bit from this. It's okay, I'll tell you one more thing about anemia. I'm kind of tempted to write a romance that's about, like, an anemic character and a vampire. There's always the big thing that they can't get past, or whatever. And don't you think that? I don't know. They say write what you know. Right? So, I'm going to read from the opening chapter. here. I'm not going to read this entire thing. It is slow build-up in which I'll just give you a little bit of background. Karina, our main character, is a grad student, and she's working at her sister's restaurant. Her sister is the manager of a restaurant and bar not far from Madison Square Garden. And it's crazy crowded in there that night because there was this huge concert going on at Madison Square Garden, and it's pandemonium in there, at least down in the bar level. Upstairs in the second floor where it's just, tables, and it's a little quieter. And the kitchen is already closed, so now they're just down to drinks and dessert, and whatnot. And a rich man comes in, and our waitress is, of course, extremely taken with him right away, and she leads him upstairs and puts him in a chair, and whatnot. She's also trying to avoid the fact that her advisor has walked into the bar downstairs, and she's told him that she can't meet with him because she was sick. But of course she wasn't sick, it's that she's covering for her sister at this restaurant. Anyway, so, there's always something, right? I led him all the way to a table by the windows, overlooking the street, desperate to kill as much time as possible. I had the funny urge to pull out his chair for him, as if this were a white tablecloth kind of place, but I hung back until he seated himself. He had a top coat folded over his arm, and he hung it over the back of his chair, put his hat on the wide sill of the window, and sat. I set the menu down in front of him. "The kitchen is already closed," I said, going into my automatic after 10 p.m. patter. "But the full list of cocktails is, of course, available, as are the selections on the dessert menu." I turned the menu over to show the list of desserts. "Today's sorbet is passion fruit." "Passion fruit?" he asked, one eyebrow raised like he was skeptical of it. I joked. "That's the name of my Lord Lightning cover band." That made him laugh. In the street lamps that shone through the window, I couldn't tell the color of his eyes. Blue, hazel, green? The light from outside was stark and bluish compared to the soft amber lights in the bar, making his cheekbones look impossibly sharp. His hair was dangerously blonde, almost white, and cropped close to his head. His age was impossible to gauge. He could have been a young 40 or a haunted 20. He was gorgeous and striking, and his voice had a slight British tinge to it as he said, "Oh, just try to work it into every conversation, do you?" "Yes, exactly," I grinned. Normally, flirting while waitressing was asking for trouble, and I avoided it at all costs. I didn't like men thinking just because I was female it was okay to treat me like something on the menu. But I was on a mission to waste as much time as I could. Besides, he was quite attractive, and that was an understatement. "Actually, I think the sorbet is lemon with a little orange food color. It all tastes the same." He chuckled. "So, you don't recommend the sorbet?" I chewed my lip a moment. I lied. I've never actually had it. "Well, at least one of us should embrace new experiences," he said. "Bring me a dish of the sorbet and a bourbon. Something better than Maker's Mark." His eyes were on me, very intent, as if he had no intention of actually opening the menu. I collected it from him. "Coming right up." I couldn't resist making a fake little curtsy and then hurrying away. That worked out perfectly, I thought. I punched in the drink order from the upstairs server station, went down to the kitchen to dish the sorbet myself, completely out of view of my advisor and his friend. I picked up the bourbon from the back station, added it to the round tray with the sorbet, and headed right back upstairs. "Here you are," I said, as I set down the napkin and the drink and the small metal dish of sorbet and a spoon. "Thank you," he said, and sounded sincere about it. I busied myself for a little while, refilling the water glasses, checking that a couple didn't want a round of dessert. They didn't, which was just as well, because the sugary sweetness coming from the two of them, cooing at each other, was enough to hospitalize a diabetic. I guess they were having each other for dessert. It was not hard to feel bitter watching them when I'd never met a guy who could act like that and actually mean it. While I wiped down some of the empty tables, I glanced over at my solo customer. He was sipping the whiskey very slowly and looking out the window. Maybe it was that a man drinking alone always looks melancholy, but I got the feeling he was a little sad about something. Wistful, maybe. I also noticed he wasn't eating the sorbet. I went back to his table. "Was it not to your liking? I can take it away and bring you something else you might like." He settled back in his chair and gave me a thoughtful look. "Actually, there is something I'd like." "Name it." I gave him my waitress smile. "I'd like you to try the sorbet." He picked up the spoon, which was still resting exactly where I'd left it, and cut into the perfect scoop that had clearly been untouched. "Me?" I asked, as if he could have meant anyone else. "Why? To make sure it's okay?" No, because you said you hadn't had it before. I thought, what a shame. She works in a place like this, and she's never tasted the sweetness right in front of her. He held up the spoon, waving it enticingly. I glanced behind me to make sure Jill or some other server wasn't watching. Normally I didn't do this sort of thing with customers, but I wanted to see what happened if I did. All right. He held the spoon still, then up toward my chin. I leaned forward, my hands on my apron, and slowly closed my mouth over it. The spoon was cold, and the sorbet tart at first, then sweet as it melted in my mouth. His gaze never left my face, and he smiled as I straightened up. Attention from guys often felt slimy to me, but from him it was all warmth, his eyes like hot spotlights. I wanted to shine in that light. Anything else I can get for you? I asked, one of my standard lines. He ran his finger along his chin as if I had proposed a question requiring deep thought. I can have the bartender pour you something else if you don't like this, I blathered. Oh, I like this, he said, a half-smile coming onto his face, and I felt he wasn't talking about what was in his glass. His neck was long and graceful, and he had not the slightest bit of slouch in his posture, like a male figure skater or a model. He seemed more gorgeous the longer I looked at him, with high cheekbones and a luscious-looking mouth. He tilted his face up at me. Your name tag says Ashley. Is that your name? Yes, of course, I answered. It was a lie, actually. Ashley was the girl I was filling in for tonight, the one who was actually too sick to come in. I'd quit working here months ago to concentrate on my thesis, but my old name tag had been lost or repurposed by now. Ashley, Ashley, gray as a cat, as you drift to the floor from the end of my cigarette, he said, as if reciting a poem. His voice was cultured and smoky like a deep jazz saxophone and made me feel melty inside. There was something charming about him, even if what he said made no sense. Ashley, tell me something, he said, angling his head as if to see me better. Would you like to try something new? Something else? I echoed. What do you mean? Are you bored? Tired of the rat race? Looking for a little adventure? Well, sure, who isn't? I said. He nodded at my automatic response. Indeed, Ashley, I'm bored. I would like to play a game, and I would like someone to play it with me. I bet you say that to all the girls, I joked. His expression darkened, surprising me. Actually, it takes a very special person to pique my interest. He thinks I'm special, I thought. If you don't want to play, that's fine, he added. I'll leave and never come back if you say no. Right about then, my weirdo meter should have been pinging hard, but my inner alarm bells were silent. Maybe because he wasn't giving off a weird vibe, and he seemed sincere about leaving me alone if I didn't want to play along. And maybe because it was hard to say no to such an attractive man. I decided to test him out a little, though. I'll play if you answer a question. He smiled. Name it, he said, imitating me perfectly. Tell me why a wealthy, well-dressed man like yourself is drinking alone. You mean, am I here fleeing a harridan wife or escaping my supermodel girlfriend? I shook a finger at him. No answering a question with a question, mister. That's rude. He flattened a hand against his lapels. I beg your pardon. You're right. An honest question deserves an honest answer. The truth is, I've come to the end of a very long and tiring episode in my business. I'm at loose ends for the first time in a long time, and to celebrate, I wanted to be alone for a while, something I haven't had a chance to do recently. He glanced out the window, then turned his full attention back to me. In fact, I was just working myself up to a promise to spend more time by myself. He paused and swirled the bourbon in his glass. When you came along. There. Was that a satisfactory answer? I smiled. He seemed confident, sophisticated, and eminently reasonable. He seemed real. Yes, it was. Okay, so what's the game? The game is very simple. I ask you to do something, and you do it. I'm going to leave you off there. But you get a little feel for their characters there. Let me just check my little comments here. Yes, I wrote a Malfoy. So there are many Easter eggs in this book for my Harry Potter fan-loving friends. It's not a secret that I have been writing Harry Potter fanfic for many, many years, and there are a lot of Easter eggs in this. I had to do something to keep myself interested, and just there's always multiple layers at which a story is taking place, right? So I have some friends who have cast Jason Isaacs in the Jason role. I have others who just went straight to Alan Rickman. There are others who have decided that it's Benedict Cumberbatch, actually, with his hair blonde. And he could play the role perfectly reasonably. The funny thing is, a lot of people have asked me, who do I picture in my head for Karina? And of course, I didn't have a specific actress in mind. I had an idea, because this is an internal point of view of who I sort of pictured. But I went and looked around at different, pictures of actresses and whatnot, because people always ask, well, who is it? And it's like, well, I don't know. Like I did a book a couple of years ago called Mind Games, and I basically told them it's like young Winona Ryder, like before the batshit crazy Winona Ryder, whatever. Winona Ryder was really short hair. Okay, maybe batshit crazy was okay too. But actually, do I have that book? I do. The book was called Mind Games, and but yes. But there was a photo shoot recently. Actually, this is the funny part, of Emma Watson, who plays Hermione in the Harry Potter movies. Looking like a dead ringer for this character. I mean, with just the way they had cut her hair, and she's wearing like this big chain around her neck, like these huge link chains, whatever. And I was like, oh my god. Went around Tumblr. I saved it somewhere, and I'll post it later when I get around to making more posts about this book. I was just like, oh my god, somebody's all grown up, and I'm like, oh, but Karina's 26 in this book, and I'm like, oh, actually Emma Watson is not 16 anymore. She's getting up there in age. So, yeah, kind of funny. But so, all right. So some questions people sent me. All right. What made you decide to make James an artist rather than a businessman? I think I did finally end up answering that, which is that they had to have something to talk about other than sex. Art seemed like a reasonable thing. What's the suggested soundtrack for Slow Surrender? That's one thing that I've been getting. So, my actual model, if you will, for James is, of course, the young David Bowie. And because here's how my subconscious logic went when I sat down to write this proposal. It was like, okay, what E.L. James did, I feel, is I don't feel that it's really Twilight fan fiction. I mean, it's already this AU, she said, I'm just taking these two character archetypes, and I feel like she took them from the movie almost more than from the book. And then fans who are in the Twilight fandom have told me, oh yes, there are actually certain scenes that are like echoes of things that are in the movies, not necessarily in the book. So I was like, all right, I can go along with that. And I said, well, what was the big mind-blowing vampire movie of my youth? Was The Hunger with Catherine Deneuve and David Bowie. And so that's my James. Is that and of course, but in mind, he's not a vampire. He's just a billionaire. In the same way that in 50 Shades of Grey, he's not a vampire. He's just a billionaire. So, but like there's the parallel for me, and I basically also knew if it's going to be a trilogy, I'm going to write 3 books. It has to be somebody that I can fantasize about endlessly, essentially. And so that's why it had to be David Bowie and not just some fly by night, crush that pop culture crush that I have, because I don't know, like I wrote a short story once that's essentially a pay-in to Clive Owen. And then later my agent was like, you should turn that into a whole novel. And I tried, and I couldn't get past chapter 3. I was just like, it's used up. Like that was the thing about Clive Owen that I could write, And I'm like, now I have to find somebody else, kind of a thing. And so, whereas, I've been fantasizing about David Bowie since I was, for 30 years. So, or more possibly. So, I figured I'm not going to run out of David Bowie anytime soon. So for me, it's David Bowie, but it can be Benedict Cumberbatch for you. It can be whoever. I mean, that's one of the great things about this type of romance novel, is that you should be able to cast who you want in those roles. So, yeah. Also, she was writing Heathcliff. Yes. Anyway, speaking of Heathcliff, actually, one of the books I read recently from my same publisher was an erotic Wuthering Heights called Wuthering Nights. Don't let the kind of the punny title fool you. It's not in any way a parody. It is really an erotic transformative work. Much of it from Heathcliff's point of view, in which essentially Heathcliff literally physically dominates everyone in the entire book. And I thought it was hot. Basically, it's not a romance though. In the same way that Wuthering Heights is really not a romance. It in the modern sense. Kathy dies. So, these days we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to kill them off and then have them be reunited in heaven or something like that. It's like, that's just not done anymore. Yeah, they don't let us do that. So my soundtrack, of course, while I was writing it, was I would like there are people who make Bowie lists of videos on YouTube, and I would just put one of those on and put it in my headphones and write and, whatnot. But a lot of the time, actually, I can't write with songs with words, with English words in them, like the words kind of clash with what I'm trying to write, and it just makes me slower. And this one I was already going really slowly for whatever reason, whether it's the anemia or it was just something about this book had to be written at a certain pace. I normally write about 1,000 words an hour, and this book was 500 words an hour. I don't know why. It's like this book, it's like I had to drive all the way to California in second gear, and I don't know, just that's how it turned out. And it turned out quite good, so I guess I shouldn't argue with my subconscious about how it wants to do it. But, so I would put on nonverbal music when I could. I've gotten really into Lindsay Sterling, who is this violinist, insane, fantastic violinist who has a lot of YouTube videos. So look. If you Google Lindsay Sterling, you will turn her up. She just did a video recently with Pentatonics, who are these sort of a 5-person a cappella vocal group, but then they got together to do a cover of Imagine Dragons' Radioactive, which is fantastic. I listen to a lot of, of Pandora and Sirius XM, and, things like that. They have, the Spa channel, the Chill channel, and whatnot. So, sort of soundtracks in the background. I like the Tron reboot soundtrack a lot. And, there's sort of different settings require sort of different things. And it's like this book is very much, it's all New York City, and there's a lot of driving around in a limousine at night, and whatnot. And so, things like the Tron soundtrack are really appropriate. And then, it was like the next book, there's a lot more that's in England, and there's a lot more in different sorts of stuff in the museum, and whatnot. And I found, it sounds a little different, but, but I don't think there's no specific, like, oh, put this album on while you're listening to this, and you will, put this symphony on while you're listening to this, and you will have like Pink Floyd and The Wizard of Oz or something. It's not quite like that. But yes, my suggested soundtrack is something instrumental, but that's a little urban and a little bit energetic. Karina has a very energetic voice. She's, even though I wrote it really slowly, she's very snappy and, one-linerish, and her attention span is very short, and she goes from thing to thing, and then a lot of her conversations with Becky are very back and forth, very short sentences and stuff. And so yeah, Lady Gaga would work really well. That kind of modern pop music would work really well. Let's see. All right. One question I got was, what should readers read next? If you have read Slow Surrender, and now I know Book 2 doesn't come out until January, and it's a long time to wait, and you want to know what to read in the meantime. I often ask people a couple of questions, like, well, were you reading it for the kink, or are you reading it for the romance? Because it can depend. I've written a lot of books, so, but yeah, my books are so different from each other that it's sort of hard to know, what you want. So if what you want is sort of contemporary, or, well, okay, it's not even contemporary, kind of heartstring tugging, stuff, the thing that most people seem to be going to is Darren's Guitar Chronicles, which is my online serial. And, do I have a copy of it? I do. I have a copy of the omnibus here, but the real way to read Darren's Guitar Chronicles is free online as a serial. And if you Google Darren's Guitar Chronicles, you will find it. There's also several ebook versions of it. I think we're up to Volume 4. Volume 5 I need to process still. And then we're into what would be Book 6, in the online it posts right now. It's posting 3 times a week. It's usually 2 times a week, but August is what's called We See Rimo, which is Web Serial Writing Month, which is kind of like NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, except that it's for web serial people. And the folks at Epi Guide are running it. So I think it's like the 7th year they're doing it, something like that. So I'm posting 3 times a week. Yes, I'm trying to post that 3 times a week, and I'm trying to finish writing book 3 in the Slow Surrender series, in the Struck by Lightning series, as the series name is called. And I am, and I'm struggling to finish this one, and I think it's because there's still some loose ends that I haven't tied up, and I keep thinking I'm going to write. Here's what actually keeps happening. I keep thinking I'm going to write the scene before the climactic scene. Like there has to be a setup scene and then a big climax, right? And the scene before the climax, so 2 scenes before it will be the climax. Karina and James keep basically sneaking off to have sex instead of moving the plot forward. I'm going with it right now. I'm like, okay, fine, have another sex scene. That's good for me, but it means that it's taking even longer to deliver the book to the publisher. And and at some point they might say, this book is too long. You have to cut some of it. If that happens, then there'll be DVD extras, and I'll read them on my website or whatever. so it will go. All right, we've reached the 1 hour point in this chat. Since I'm not doing this on Google, the Google Hangout just didn't. I could not get it to work. I've always done it before and it was fine, and this time just couldn't get it to work. So normally with those at 1 hour we have to kind of stop and then start over, because once YouTube videos start to get too long, it just, I don't know, it has some kind of issue and coughs up hairballs everywhere and dies. This time I get to just keep going, because Ustream, as I think I have proved in the past, does let you go for at least 2 hours before it really starts to, to need help. So, so anyway, thank you for sticking with me here in my office. A cat just came in. You can't see him though, because he's on the floor. And we'll see if we can get him to. I bet you later he may just walk straight across the desk, because this is the same cat who photobombed the the chat pictures. So, hi along. All right. So, I was answering. What should readers read next? So Darren's Guitar Chronicles is one thing if you want, but the big difference is that, first of all, it's set in the 1980s. Second of all, our main character is a gay male. So that's hugely different, obviously, for people who are looking for something sort of het. If what you're looking for is the kink, so Telepaths Don't Need Safe Words is one place to start. The Velderet is another one of my books that is very, male dom, female submissive. It's a space opera, but it's very, very kinky. There's also a gay male character in there, too. Hi, Kitty. But the main character is this, is this woman sort of exploring her submissive side and whatnot, and so that's a good one to get. And that one's available Amazon, all the, Velderet's everywhere. In fact, there's an audiobook of it narrated by Nobelis Reed of the Nobelis Erotica podcast. So if you like audiobooks, that one's a good one in audio. Darren is also in audio, and the Prince's Boy is an audio. So if you want gay and kinky, by far my gayest and my kinkiest book is The Prince's Boy. It is also free to read online as a serial on Circuit.com. So don't feel that just because you're not rolling in money, you can't enjoy good things in life. But yes, it's 2 paperback volumes to tell the entire story, and there's 2 ebook volumes also. But yeah, that is by far my gayest and kinkiest story, in that there are no female characters in it at all. I mean, I said this is how we're going to avoid the problem of the female characters being marginalized. There are none. It's just, I've created a society where the way this story goes, they just don't meet any. I mean, literally. The military milieu is completely male. It's high fantasy, so, and I'm planning a sequel in which they will actually not only meet female characters, the female characters will be extremely important, but, that's later. And yes, as Julian points out, I suspect The Prince's Boy is probably a different audience. Probably is, but I don't judge. I think there are some people who just like reading erotic material, and some have the taste for fantasy, some don't. One of the questions, I'll actually answer it now. Someone, was it hard writing no science fiction or fantasy elements in this book? This book is, Slow Surrender. It's all real world, real characters taking place now, so it's not historical, it's not, it's totally contemporary, and it was hard, actually. When the plot is entirely built around just the characters getting to know each other, and which is more subtle in a lot of ways than a science fiction story where, you have a kidnapping and a rescue, and a lot of the pages are taken up with action, and and yes, a lot of the pages are taken up with sex in mine, but, it was still sort of, when you feel stuck in a science fiction, like in a space opera, okay, and then you have a ship blows up, you can literally blow something up, and I didn't feel that what I wanted to do was just blow things up emotionally, necessarily, and be like, okay, now they'll have a fight. Yeah, no, that's not how my mind works. Actually, my two main characters get along remarkably well, but it's the third book of a series where they get 3 books to get to know each other. Hi, Sabrina. I see some other folks have joined us. That meowing you hear in the background is Oolong. I don't know if you can hear him. He's very quiet. But that little chirp. But yes, it was hard writing no science fiction or no fantasy at all. And it was hard for me to stay completely in the heterosexual milieu also. I write a lot of characters in a lot of different sexualities, and I'm used to kind of mixing and matching them in, any kind of way that, my take is sort of, there's the whole, if you're bisexual, which I am, there's the whole bisexual invisibility thing, like everyone just assumes that you are, depending on whatever partner you're standing next to. If you're female and if you're a parent female and you're standing next to a parent male, you are apparently heterosexual. And if you're apparently female, you're standing next to an apparent female, you are apparently lesbian. And so forth. And it's like, no, you're wrong about all of it. So I said, well, I'm bisexual, and I just assume all my characters are bisexual until proven otherwise. But many of them are going to be monogamous and are only going to have one partner. Doesn't mean they're not bisexual underneath it all, but it means that their behavior may be purely heterosexual, and so forth. So, so that was interesting, where I was sort of like, oh, I'm a little more constrained than I often am. And, of course, our 2 main characters here are monogamous, so it doesn't really come up. But it was one of the things that was in my mind, where I was just like, wow, trying to really keep this, and keeping the camera on them and, whatnot. Also, at one point, of course, they go to a big BDSM play party, and I got interested in writing the backstories of all these other characters they meet, and of course, those will have to be in, I don't know, other novels some other day, and whatnot. A gay couple, a lesbian couple, a femdom couple, a femdom male sub couple, so forth. So, yeah, all kinds of things. I don't know the other thing I was going to tell you was, did I give you guys my phone number? Anyone out there who wants to text me a question, if you can't get into the social stream there or whatever, I had printed it out so it would be easy to hold it up, and of course I can't find it. Here's my number, 617-290-9043. I have the ringer off, but, text to that number. Here, I'll give it one more time, 617, that's Boston's area code, 290-9043. And like I said, if you think of questions as you're going along, hit me in that social stream or text them to me. Now I'm going to attempt to find my phone, which I know is right here. I probably piled books on it. Here, I'll show you the one other book I have piled up here. This is the first book of the Magic University series, which is if you are a Harry Potter fan, read this one. It is all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll that are missing from the Harry Potter books. Here's a funny thing. Okay, this is my phone. It's in a case that looks like a book. It looks like like those little Bibles almost, but inside it's a phone. In another, if you like Karina's story, there's a story of mine out there. It's a novella called Dear Girl, and it's where the protagonist is actually British, and she's a romance writer. And it's funny, it was part of this project I did for Colloquy, where they took a first chapter written by one of 4 writers, and then each of the 4 of us wrote a continuation novella. And it's half the length of Slow Surrender, but it is the same number of sex scenes. So yeah, I deliver a lot of bang for the buck, quite literally. But I have our main character is sitting in the airport lounge, and she's a writer. She's doing the thing of looking around at the people and deciding who are their who are they, what are their backgrounds, to kind of get in the writing mood. And she sees this attractive man. Of course, he's the love interest, and he's holding a little book in his hands. And she's like, is it a Bible? Is it his address book? Is it this? Is it that? She makes up all this stuff. And of course, then they turned out they're sitting next to each other on the plane, like you do in the beginning of a romance novel when you're introducing your hero and heroine accidentally. And of course, he opens it and it's a phone. And she's like, haha, well, mystery solved. The funny thing is, at that time, I did not know you could buy a phone case, which actually looked, but I said, this is something that should exist, don't you think? I mean, and then 6 months after I wrote that, found this. I was like, yes, I must have it. I must have it. It's real. As I told you, these things happen where I make up something and then it turns out it's real. Someone is suggesting, do a short story anthology of the rest of the party people. Yes. Yes, I probably could. And I probably will at some point if the demand is there. But yeah, so, okay, wait, I'm going to look to see, does anyone text me? Alright, I'm going to set this here where I can see it. Good. I really, really had printed out my phone number on a piece of paper so I could hold it up. But, well. Best laid plans. Something to read a little bit later. I'm thinking, I have a couple of things I can read from. I was thinking, if people want, I could also read a preview of book 2, which could be kind of fun. And I know, spoilers, blah, 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 but I'm going to read you a random piece, not a totally random piece, but a piece from the middle of book 2, so that we'll have to figure out what's happening, but to get back to the questions that people emailed me in advance and chat, when I want to make sure I actually get through them all, since people took the time to send me questions. What should readers read next? Oh my god, cliffhanger. Why is James an artist? Did you read 50 Shades of Grey, actually? So I kind of answered this already, because I said I did talk about it. So I read just the first book. And then what I was basically afraid of was that I was going to actually plagiarize somehow, and have a scene happen that was too much like what goes on in the actual book. And so I just couldn't read past that. The style of the writing, the style of the relationship dynamic was not my thing. I liked some of it, and it hits some notes that, you can see why it struck a nerve, but just not my thing. And I did not want to feel like I was forcing myself to read 2 more books. And so a good friend of mine, Jennifer, hello if you're out there, read the whole thing and basically wrote a chapter-by-chapter summary for me. And she's like, here is the summary of what goes on in the rest of it that you haven't read. So that I could kind of be sure that I was not going in that direction. As it turns out, it goes in a completely different direction, and which thank goodness. So the thing that I find the most different, I think, yes, it's the same setup of a young woman who is less experienced and a dominant billionaire. I mean, who is kinky, who has an established kinky lifestyle, as it were. But the main thing is, I mean, I really felt like what happens in 50 Shades is the only reason the BDSM is in there is like it's a trigger for his inner demons, or it's a signal for his inner demons. And I thought, and okay, I can understand. In that way, it's a metaphor for the original story where he's a vampire, where he's actually a monster, right? And her being drawn into his world, and so forth. And it's like, that's a classic story. The gothic romance, so forth. It's told again and again. But, she essentially tames him in 50 Shades. She tames him, and it goes basically straight towards heteronormativity, away from the kink. And I said, no, I think what happens in real life is, and I don't just think this, this is my experience and the experience of many people I know in the BDSM community, is that as you fall in love, the BDSM gets more intense, not less intense. As you trust each other more, you do more way out things and outrageous things, and you try more things, as opposed to, okay, well, now that we've worked out our problems, now we don't need to be kinky anymore. That's not it at all. It's, you want to, so I wanted to find a way, just like I was saying with the Kung Fu movie and analogy, that where the BDSM, the sex, the love gets more intense as the book goes on, and then, of course, through all 3 books, it continues to get more intense. So, I said in Romantic Times is the big trade magazine of romance, and I have a piece in the current, I think it's in the online version, where it's like, writers speak out or something, in which I said, BDSM is the skydiving of the heart, and human beings jump out of airplanes. A lot of people wouldn't do it, but a lot of people understand that people do have the urge to do it, and so, but they're all about safety. You have to take a class first, you have to sign the waivers, all this other kind of things. BDSM is a lot the same. You have to know what you're doing, you have to get the right equipment, it has to be safe, so forth, and then, okay, maybe it's not quite as extreme as skydiving is, but it's, it's up there, and so and sometimes the protagonist, in my case, it's, the submissive Karina, doesn't always know all the safety precautions maybe that James is taking, but sometimes she realizes them later, where she's like, oh wow, like that was really smart, like, oh, I'm glad he did it that way, and it's like she doesn't realize that the Dom does not necessarily lose himself in the scene the way that she does, and that she surrenders herself to this experiences of ecstasy, and so forth. While he's back there timing how long it takes and making sure that her blood circulation is okay, and this, that, and the other. And he's constantly taking care of her, and this is the truth. About many BDSM relationships, and the Dom is in charge, but that also means the Dom is the one who has to be taking care of everything. It's like when you're tied up and in bondage, you're not doing anything. You're surrendering yourself physically, but that means that you're in the care of the other person. So, let's see. So some news about what's been going on with the book. It's the official release was Tuesday. I have not received my copies from Amazon yet, but I'm hoping that they'll be here in the next day or two. Hopefully I'll have a nice big box of them to bring to Geeky Kink event as well. The ones I've been showing you are just the couple of advanced copies that my publisher, FedEx to me. So the official launch was then, but it's already gone to a second printing, because we just found out this week that Target is going to make it a recommended read, which I guess means that it will be in the little stacks at Targets everywhere. I don't know what date this will happen exactly, but it would be really cool if anyone goes into a Target and happens to see, my book on display. Send me a picture. I'll send you some smut. How's that sound? But yeah, I'm. Yeah, it's pretty exciting, and so Target alone, I guess, is taking some number of thousands of copies, which already makes this book outselling, most of my other books by, a factor of 10. So, and the ebook is a whole nother thing, and I don't really know the sales, but what they've told me so far is that ebook sales have been extremely good, and it's definitely on Amazon has far outranked all of my other books. It's got 56 reviews or something, which is way more than any of my other titles, and even the titles that are free. Darren's Guitar Chronicles Volume 1 is free, and it's, been downloaded by, tens of thousands of people at this point, and but many people who download free books don't ever bother to read them. I've still got MP3s that I've downloaded, in promotional copies of this, that, and the other that I've never listened to, so, so we're even. And then one day they come up in iTunes Shuffle, and you're like, what is this? Where did this come from? Oh, that was, that one day at, spin.com or something. It was like, click here to get promotional, whatever, or those, like, Starbucks cards where it's like, get today's free iTunes download. And you're like, okay, sure. And then later I'm like, where did this come from? I don't know. This thing should be tagged with some kind of source or something, right? Oh, now where did that go? What did I do with that? So one of the things you can do, if you go to my blog, which is ceciliatan.com. Actually, I'm going to bring this up in my other window, because one kind of cool thing, so, the book is an ebook, right? And the one of the places you can buy it is Google eBooks, or Google Books. what do you call it? So, there's like the Google Play Store has a thing where, it shows you the book and how many words it is and what the price is and, the metadata. And one of the things that they show you, because it's Google, is they show you a little, almost like a word cloud or a tag cloud of the most commonly used words in the book. Which is like, well, that's interesting. Let's see what words I horribly overuse, in my writing, right? And so it gives you this whole thing. Okay, now of course, don't ask me why. I know I'm not off the internet because apparently I'm using all the bandwidth in the world to send this video because I'm actually failing to pull up blog.ceciliadan.com on my other machine here. But I had made myself a printout of this thing, and now I don't know what I did with it. Apparently, I just left some pages lying around here. The cat made off with them. Blame the cat. Oolong, it's your fault. Yeah, I don't see it. I had printed it out, but among the things I noticed is, it's one of these things where the more often a word is used, the bigger the word appears in the little thing, right? And so, of course, Karina's name is really large because we see her name a lot. Whereas James's name is not very large because, of course, she doesn't even know his name for half the book, and then, and then he tells her to call him James at one point where they're having this neat "what should I call you" conversation, and she figures it's not his real name, and then so it's used more sparingly. Let's put it that way. But here it comes. So I'm looking at this little thing. So I took a screen capture of it and then posted it. And oh yes, if you go to my website, you will also see, how when you go to various sites and there's always these annoying chat pop-up windows that are like chat with sexy girls in your area, whatever, but it's fake, right? It's like this thing that like if you click on it, it takes you to some porno site or something, and whatnot. Or sometimes there's a little chat bar, but there's not a real girl there. It's like a robot that's like, "Hey, sexy, how are you doing? I'm, me so horny," right? So you'll see I have a parody of same on my website. I won't give away what it is, but yes, a box pops up and asks you to type some things, and you can type in it. Let me see. Where did it go? Give me the slow surrender tag. Error establishing a database connection. Okay, apparently my website is having some major issue right now. Anyway, hopefully you guys are hearing me just fine, I guess. If it looks like I'm dropping out, so we've been having, thank you vandals on the internet, we've been having sort of intermittent denial of service attacks just happening on our IP addresses and whatnot. Not because I think of anything that the machines we have here do, but just, random internet vandalism is what it is. So, but yeah, wow, really weird. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully this is all getting through just fine. All right, anyway, so the one thing I did notice is that the word clit is way bigger than the word cock. So it's like, gee, do you think I wrote a book that was focused on women's pleasure? Somewhat, yeah, maybe. Also, James keeps his clothes on a lot of the time because that's part of his power trip with her. And so a lot of it is about the girl parts more so than the man parts, at least in the beginning. Because this is all about how often it happens. And so, he's basically like, well, you have to earn my cock. So that word isn't used as often, yeah, it's kind of funny. You can see, the one that struck me as weird, though, is that Benoit balls, it was like the word came out really large. And it was like the Benoit balls are only in one chapter, but I guess they're referred to many, many times because that was like one of the things that came out the largest. I'm not sure how strict this Google, word usage, graphic thing is I'm not sure how strict the algorithm is, but I was like, did I really talk about the Benoit balls that much? You know, and it's like, they were confined to this one chapter, but okay, fine. Maybe I did talk about the Benoit balls a lot. I don't know. All right, another one from the people who pre-emailed me. I love reading these BDSM books, but I don't get why people say BDSM is or isn't feminist. Doesn't even seem related to me. Why does everything have to be political? Okay, let me read that one more time. I love reading these BDSM books, but I don't get why people say BDSM is or isn't feminist. Doesn't even seem related to me. Why does everything have to be political? And I think, well, so this is the thing. One of the reasons it's political is because there are people who want to make it political. They want to say, oh no, women like spanking, that's like dangerous to them, and they've internalized their own misogyny and, you know, whatnot. And it's like, okay, folks, pack up first of all. I don't think that's the case. I don't think women who like to read about powerful doms, you know, in their fantasies necessarily like want to be dragged out back by a caveman. I mean, you know, like, and where that comes from, I'm not sure. It's like the guys that we're fantasizing about in these, you know, these dom billionaire books are so far from that, you know, that it's like, you know, they're unbelievably rich, extremely well groomed, extremely well dressed, you know, whatever. These guys don't exist in real life. I mean, come on, this is a fantasy we're talking about, first of all. Women owning their fantasies is a political thing, is a political act, is an act of freedom, because, and the reason it's political is because people keep trying to take them away. People keep trying to suppress our sexuality. People keep trying to suppress our, you know, our ability to express ourselves. And they keep trying to tell us we're doing it wrong and we're not allowed to, and, you know, so forth. That's why it's political. And if you live in a world where nobody's trying to take the romance novel away from you, or nobody's trying to take your BDSM reading away from you, that's great. You know, but you live in a privileged, wonderful bubble that I think a lot of the rest of the world isn't in, and a lot of the rest of the country isn't in. You know, a lot of people still feel like they have to hide their romance novel because they're going to get judged for reading it. They're going to not get a raise at their job because their boss is going to judge them and think, oh, well, she's such a stupid bitch for reading those books. You know, that's a real thing that happens. And so I think owning up to what your fandom is, whatever it is, owning up to your desires, owning up to your sexuality, whether it's just the fantasies in your head or whether you're going to go out and try to meet people, you know, through FetLife or at the Fetish Fair flea market, or, you know, wherever it is you go out. By the way, the Fetish Fair flea market is a real thing. I'm not saying that as a metaphor, you know, but like a meat market or something. You know, it's a real event here in New England, which I started, so that's why I can talk about it. You know, but it's thousands of people getting together in a hotel and meeting each other and, you know, whatnot, and, you know, and the organization that puts it on, the New England Leather Alliance, is not sketchy at all. I mean, their whole point is, we want to take it out of the world of sketchy, illicit, you know, like just meeting people through personal ads and not knowing if they're, you know, potentially a serial killer or something, and instead, you know, well, actually meet them at a nice, you know, public place where you can see if they have other friends, and, you know, kind of people get to know each other and, you know, whatnot. A BDSM convention is a lot like a science fiction convention, and not just because you see a lot of the same people. You know, it's, you know, just people trying, oh, what are you into? What do you like? You know, oh, let's take a class on that. Oh, I saw somebody wrote a book about that. I mean, you know, on and on it goes. So it's not that everything has to be political. It's that if we had total freedom and we could do what we wanted, it wouldn't be political at all, because the books would just be like any other thing that people could go and enjoy. And that's what I wish it was, you know, that people would be like, oh, I feel like reading some erotic BDSM today. And, you know, and there would be no danger of, you know, your partner getting the wrong idea, or your roommate getting the wrong idea. I mean, you know, people are very, very judgmental about sexuality, you know, and that's the basis of it, basically. So, someone in my social stream here said, "Great event, miss attending now that we're in Arizona." The flea markets, I'm assuming you mean. Hopefully there'll be another one in Houston soon. I ran a couple of them there, and then Danny of Leather by Danny and some local folks there are, I think, going to start trying to get that going again. I know we talked about trying to do one in San Diego, maybe, Southern California. I'm not involved in running the flea markets anymore. Mostly just I'm too busy writing books, and with the anemia problem that I've been having, I can't work 18 hours a day like I used to. I really need to limit myself. And this is a huge issue for a lot of writers. I'm seeing it a lot, that, we feel like to get anywhere, we have to use every minute of the day to try to earn with. And that's the way the economy has pushed us. I mean, what you can actually make, from writing, from proofreading, from doing freelance editing, whatnot, it's not a lot of money. People are like, oh, with your editing, you're getting $25 an hour. And it's like, well, did you actually look at what $25 an hour works out to in annual salary? And then remember, you have that as a freelancer, you pay taxes, and then you pay your self-employment tax twice, because you essentially pay as the employer and as the employee. You pay both. It's not exactly an easy life. And I have to cut back. So, and volunteerism is what had to go. And yes, we were technically running the flea markets outside of New England for a profit, but the actual profit was never really there. It was mostly that instead of running it through a 501c3, I ran it through my credit cards and my bank account for some number of years, and now it will be, I don't know, through the local organizations or through Danny's business accounts, and I don't know. I'm going to leave that up to them to decide. They're nice events, and I predict that there will be more of them. So if you want a flea market in your area, the man to contact is Leather by Danny. I think we used to have a criteria, at least 4 different BDSM community groups in that region had to be invested in helping to put it on. And especially 4 groups that were not all the same. So, the ideal thing is like, a gay men's group, a heterosexual couples group, a lesbian group, a trans group, or like maybe a masked chapter, or that kind of a thing. So that there's diversity, because the whole point of the flea market is for everybody, and that no matter what kind of sexuality you have, whether you're male or female or trans, or whether you're married or single, or whether you're old or young, or whether you're old guard or new guard, whether you're a bisexual, whether you're a switch, whether you're a top or a bottom, everyone needs toys. Everyone needs to be able to go and see the stuff, and whatnot. It's not all just, you can order a lot of it on the internet, but a lot of it's stuff you want to be able to see and touch and, whatever. And then the other half of it is the education, is the classes and the workshops and, learning how to use all the stuff and, whatnot. And then really all of that is just a basis for everybody meeting one another, which is, for me, it's a political thing, because when all those different fragments of the community can get together under one roof, it means that when something bad happens, like someone's ex-husband sues for custody and gets it because he says, you're a pervert, but like that's wrong, or if somebody loses their job, regardless of what they're, whether they're gay, straight, whatever, and loses their job because they said, oh, and it's because you were seen at that kinky club last night or something, that's wrong. And the community needs, all the segments of the community need to be able to fight that kind of discrimination. Period. Okay, that was my big political statement for today. All right. Looking back at the questions. Upcoming tour dates. Okay, I did the tour dates. Do you think I should give away a copy of the book? People who are in the social stream. My thought was that I would give away one of these, or an ebook version. Although I only have the PDF, I can't give away the Kindle versions, whatnot. But what I didn't put thought into is, shoot, how will I pick the winner? And so I now got to think of something dastardly that those of you who want it have to do. All right, here's the thing. I'm gonna write my number on a thing, make sure that you have it, and I'm gonna give you some time to think about it. Here, I'm gonna write this with a big marker. The great thing about being in my office is everything is here at my fingertips, right? All right, here's what you got to do. I'm gonna read a little segment of book 2. But while I'm doing that, here's my number again. For those of you who didn't hear me give it before. What you have to do in order to enter the contest to win a copy of the book, either the paperback or the ebook edition, is text me a word that is text me a word that is either a kink or a fantasy, and I'm going to pick one, and I'm going to pick the one I like the best. So a kink or a fantasy, single word, kink or fantasy. Actually, you can have up to 3 words. Have that, and the one I like the best, I will contact you back to get your mailing address or your email address. So here's my number, 617-290-9043. Yes, it's my real phone number. So text me a word. You'll have some time to think about it, because I'm going to read a segment now. And, I'm going to pick one, and one of you who texts me will be the winner. All right. Let's have a little sneak peek of the next book. While I still have time. So I said I was going to stop at 8:30. Alright, so the scenario is Karina has gone to England for the summer, where she is serving as a tour guide at this giant exhibition of the pre-Raphaelites, paintings. There are some sculptures and whatever. It's mostly the paintings, right? And there's a little bit of description of some of the paintings here, but you can Google all of them if you want. But she's going to meet a character in this segment that is who is something of an antagonist, but he's a sexy antagonist, so it's okay. And she's been contracted to give a private tour to this big money donor after hours. So it's just so it's not, the museum is closed at this point. We took the short walk from the office building to the museum. The weather was lovely, cooling a little as the afternoon turned to evening, and there was a breeze from the direction of the river. As we approached the entrance, the driver got out of a limousine sitting at the curb, and I thought instantly of Stefan. Stefan is the limousine driver from book 1. You'll see a lot of him. And yes, if you're in the social stream, you can put your number in there, and you can put your word in there instead of texting. A moment later, the driver had opened the passenger door, and a man in a sleek-looking suit with artfully tossed black hair stepped out. He was runway model gorgeous, with a flat, disdainful look in his eye that you see on the covers of magazines. 2 women, one blonde and one brunette, with the same look about them, followed. I did a double take when Martindale led me right to them. I had been expecting rich art donors to be older, like Martindale himself. Instead, the man reminded me of James, and the 2 statuesque women of Lucinda, with their cool beauty. I had met her only once at that kinky party, but she had made an impression, poised and sexy like so many of the people there, self-possessed and confident, yet exuding a sort of erotic vibe. Or maybe at that point, for me, that kind of self-possession was an erotic vibe. That was James all over, completely in control, knowing that he turned heads and left people drooling in his wake. That cool exterior had hid a passionate, wicked core. I remembered the exacting efficiency with which he had tied me up with ropes, as well as the way he had trembled against me, barely able to stop himself. Martindale brought me back to reality. Mr. Damon George, this is Karina Casper. She'll be showing you around the exhibit. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Ms. Casper. The man took my hand briefly. Martindale seemed to be waiting for him to introduce his companions, but he said nothing, and they hung back, silent. Martindale cleared his throat. Yes, well, let's go in. I'm going to skip a little bit. The lights were already on full brightness as we stepped into the first gallery, and Martindale leaves. It's just Karina, the 2 women, the rich guy, and the paintings. There's not even a security guard there. He's like elsewhere in the building. I took a deep breath, preparing to launch into a speech about the founding of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, but he stopped me before I could start. Karina Casper. May I call you Karina? You can call me Damon instead of Mr. George. Sure. Tried to guess his age. 30, maybe? Is there something in particular you want to know about the Pre-Raphaelites? Perhaps. Perhaps I merely wish to commune with the art. He clucked his tongue and walked down the first row of painting, the two women trailing behind him like obedient pets. Given that they reminded me of the people I'd seen and met at that kinky ball, I wondered if maybe they were under an order of silence. Maybe I was, too, after his comment about communing with the art. He was clearly as arrogant as they came. I reminded myself that he was a major donor, and kissing his ass was my job. So I followed along like one of his pets. He said nothing till he came to the famous image of Ophelia drowning herself. Surely you see that this painting is about violence against women, he said. How dare they show it in public? I nearly rose to the bait, except that it was so obvious he was saying something outrageous to get a rise out of me, and I didn't want to give him that satisfaction. Our mission is to preserve and display the art, I said in my best tour guide voice, not to condone any particular interpretation of it. Any great work of art will have multiple interpretations. In fact, I'd say the greater the art, the more interpretations there will be. He sniggered. Very politically correct, my dear. What wouldn't have been polite would be to say what I was really thinking, which is that I didn't give a damn what his opinions were on art, or anything, arrogant prick. But I gave him my waitress smile, and we moved on. He didn't linger over many of the paintings, skimming along till we came to the final gallery. Now here are the really sexy ones, he said, opening his arms wide as if he were going to give the nudes of Andromeda a hug. I should have known these would be his favorite paintings. Andromeda was the only nude in the whole exhibit. Depicted in 3 large paintings by Burne-Jones, Andromeda is rescued by Perseus from the sea serpent that is about to eat her. In the first one, there's this kind of love-at-first-sight moment where she's naked against the rocks and he takes off his helmet to look at her. In the second one, we see her back turned while Perseus wrestles with the black coils of the sea serpent. In the last, she is clothed and they are bending over a font together so he can show her the head of Medusa in the reflection. It struck me suddenly that Andromeda's dress in the final painting was strikingly similar to the one worn by the beggar maid. Karina is obsessed with this one painting about King Cophetua and the beggar maid, which has a, as far as I'm concerned, has a very BDSM, sort of DS component to it. I stepped closer to examine it. You have it backwards, you know, Damon said, stepping close and talking quietly in my ear, as if we were in a gallery crowded with people. Since it wasn't, I stepped aside, but he kept going. You read it right to left. But the real story is the other direction. What are you talking about? I frowned, wondering what nonsense he was spouting this time. Was he trying to get a rise out of me again? It follows the mythical tale. Ah, but that's the thing. You're supposed to see this as the great and mighty Perseus, tamed and domesticated by the beautiful girl. The first thing he does, uncover his head, then cut off the head of the snake, and then in the end show her how safe and tame the snake head of Medusa is. In other words, he emasculates himself for her, the snake, the head, and the sword all being phallic symbols. So, that's still reading it left to right. I know. That was the acceptable story to the Victorians. The real story is the other way. It's that he begins tame, fools her into thinking he's safe, and by the end is about to put his helmet on and ravish her. That's ridiculous. Ancient Greek was read from right to left, not left to right, he said smugly. I racked my brain, trying to remember everything I knew about the paintings. I was fairly sure Burne-Jones had painted three or four more of Perseus, and if only I knew the dates, I could probably prove him wrong. But these hadn't been in my thesis, and I didn't know the dates off the top of my head. How do you know so much about Greek culture anyway? He laughed and turned to face me in front of the painting. Don't you think there's a resemblance? The crazy thing is, there was. He could have been Perseus come to life, but with a much more annoying smirk. I still didn't make the connection, though. George is anglicized from Georgiades, he said. So let's just say, I know my Greek. Fine. A very interesting theory, Mr. Georgiades. Damon, please. His eyebrow arched with mischief, and I knew he was about to say something else to get a rise out of me. I only enjoy formality with those I'm fucking. I knew it. Well, if he thought he was going to shock me, he was wrong. Is that why your companions don't speak? I asked. And don't have names? He grinned with delight. You're very perceptive, Karina. I wouldn't have guessed you for the type, but then I guess people never do. I suppose you went through the whole slap and tickle nightclub scene in New York? No, I said coldly. Not really. He merely gave me a nod and then turned back to the painting behind him. He snapped his fingers, and the two women fell into a sudden embrace, kissing each other. I'm going to leave you off there. Damon George is a very interesting character, who, of course, you will see much, much more of in book 2. But as I said, he's a bit of an antagonist, because he's antagonizing her. Yeah, so, anyway. Let's see, okay. Interesting. A couple of little texts have piled up here, and I won't show them to you because I don't want to give away people's names and phone numbers. But they almost make like a little story unto themselves. Okay, so let's see. All right, 8:17. What do I need to do before we run out of time? Anyone else have any last questions you want to add to the thing? I think I got through all the ones that I had prepped. If anyone sent me one on Tumblr and I missed it, or emailed it to me once the chat had started, sorry, I can't check my email now that we've been going. I am very happy that you have all joined me for so long. I've pretty much just seen the number of viewers going steadily up, it seems to me. This whole thing will be archived on YouTube, apparently, if I have set it up properly, so you can, I don't know, tell your friends to come and see it later, and whatnot. These are fun to do. Alright, here's some more. Alright, now people are trying to win this by flattering me. Excellent. Okay, so one of them says delayed gratification. As you know, if you have any idea, or sort of, if you were listening in the beginning, delayed gratification is one of my big kinks. Normally, I'm the one who, when I'm in scene, I'm often the submissive one, and I'm a switch, so, I do both sides, but and maybe it's because I'm a storyteller that's part of the, making people wait for their ending is part of my nature, perhaps. So I love delayed gratification. The only thing I love more than delayed gratification is forced gratification, or equally as much. Maybe it just goes both ways. But yeah, the whole thing with writing these books, it's not just the reader's gratification that's delayed; it's my own also. So, like I said, I'm in the middle of writing book 3 right now. I'm continually in the middle of writing the ending. I've been writing the ending of this book for 3 weeks, which is, like I said, Karina and James keep sneaking off to have sex, instead of, confronting the antagonist and, getting their actual long-term happy ending. But not that I can blame them. I mean, I've worked very hard to get them to this point where by the end of the book, they really just can't keep their hands off each other. But come on, guys, there is some stuff to do. So, I did put some actual plot in there so that, it's like they just don't want the actual plot to end. I don't know. So, probably what I need to do now is I need to reread the entire thing to see, okay, what am I missing, so that I can, it's like getting a running start to try to leap over something, whatever. To get that running leap into that last scene, I need to reread the whole thing, I guess. I don't know. Now I know what I'm doing this weekend. So, yeah. One of the questions writers often get is, when do you write? And for me, it's when don't you write? I mean, the times when I am having to do something else is when I'm not writing. But, of course, there's an awful lot of things that I have to do, including, answer my email and do my social media stuff and do my freelance editing jobs and, whatnot, which are important to keeping my mortgage paid and, so forth. There's very little incentive for a writer to not be a workaholic. Most people I know are constantly trying to get more time to write. And you have to push back against the time that your family wants to spend with you, the time your own romantic real-life interests want to spend with you, and it's very hard sometimes to tell people, no, I need to go and sit in a room by myself, alone, no, I can't watch TV while I'm doing it, no, I can't talk to you while I'm doing it, no, I can't, my people in my life have been pretty well trained, but I hear this from other writers constantly, they get up at the crack of dawn and do it before their kids wake up because it's the only time that nobody is demanding something from them. Or, there's some classic stories about women who always wrote in the bathroom because that's the one place people are trained to leave you alone. Like when you're, in there, but then people feel weird about bugging you when you might be, I don't know. Yeah, of course, here we knock on the bathroom door all the time. Like, what are you doing in there? Come on, it's time to go to dinner. Whatever. Trying to make a balance between how much time you spend writing, how much time you spend in the real world. If you don't spend any time in the real world, then you don't have any fodder for what you write next. And, in my case, it's like, I was just in a conversation in the live journal with someone about this, that everything you do becomes a potential scene or a potential setting or a potential experience that your characters might have. I'm getting a couple of these some more interesting things. BDSM, how can I pronounce this? Eleusinian Priestess Initiation. Okay, I've got one also here that says, yes, I agree with that I could put all the side stories into an anthology, and part of that might be up to the publisher, or maybe it will become something I'll do later for the fans. The text I said was flattering. So it said the three kink words are surrender, seduction, and satisfaction. Somebody's read ahead what the other books are called. So yes, slow surrender, slow seduction is book 2, and then slow satisfaction is book 3. And I really did jinx myself with those titles because that, with them taking so long. Yes, Zeno's paragraph, as Elizabeth Bear calls it. When you keep writing and it doesn't, and you still haven't reached the end of the book. Yeah, and it's like, normally I don't have that problem. Normally, as I approach the end of the book, I write faster and faster. As like the distractions kind of fall away and the potential decision points become fewer and fewer once it really gets down to just this is what will happen in the end. So I think and normally that's what happens with me. It's like I write for discovery, but then as I grow closer to the end, I become more certain about what is going to happen. And I think what's happening here is maybe I'm not as certain about what's going to happen because maybe I've missed something, and there's a setup in there that I have not incorporated somehow. So or maybe I just don't want to leave these characters yet. Maybe I've had a good time with them. That is definitely true. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just. All right, so now I have to pick which one of you is the winner. I only have one copy of the book to give. All right, how about this? I'm going to give ebooks to everybody who texted me. And yeah, I think I'm going to go with surrender, seduction, and satisfaction. So that was the absolute most flattering one of these. 2 points to delayed gratification person, but okay, yeah. The vanity tweet, or the vanity text wins it. So I will text you back once I am off the thing here. I'll text back everybody though to say I think I'm allowed to give away more ebooks. The publisher will hopefully not mind that as much. But yeah, I don't have more paperbacks to give. I just have the one. I have one for me and one for you guys, so, alright. We will be coming up, and I know you guys are in a little bit of a time lag. I'm not sure if it's a few seconds or a few minutes now, so we are coming up on 8:30 for me, anyway, and I don't want to go right to the end, just because I think Ustream, I set it for 2 minutes, may also cut us off, but I see it tells me how many minutes I have from when I started recording. I started slightly late, so I have a couple more minutes, but, alright, last things I'm supposed to say. Remind you of the rewards. If you came in late, I have written a special bonus scene from James's point of view, and James wouldn't just write a sex scene, he had to write a whole treatise on sex and love and desire. It's like a 9 or 10 page scene. You can get it as in Kindle format, as an EPUB, or as a PDF, or the Word document for that matter. Send me. What you do is you trade me. You review the book on Amazon or Goodreads. You see the book on sale in the wild, or in a bookstore, at Target, wherever. You take a picture of it there. You take a picture of your book with the cat, your cat or other pet. Take a picture of yourself with the book. Pearls optional, as I say. I do love that there's pearls on the cover, though. Or you take a screen cap of yourself recommending it to your friends on any social media, texting them, tweeting at them, Facebook status, whatever. And don't try to send me links of these things. Send me actual screen caps. That's my email address there, ctan.writer@gmail.com. I'm also very easily Googleable, and I will send you the bonus scene. If you already received the bonus scene because you reviewed it in the ebook edition, prize number 2 is a sample of the upcoming book, which includes the scene that I just read about Damon George and a bunch more. So it's a nice big chunk. Lots of new characters are getting introduced, and she's in a new country, and it's kind of cool. And then Karina turns sleuth, basically, and so there's like a bunch of Sherlock references, and it's like the first book was Harry Potter, the second book is Sherlock. Not quite, but you know what I mean. Yes, the book should be at Target, so look for it there. Let's see, upcoming tour dates. Remember, Geeky Kink event is next weekend in Warwick, Rhode Island. I am the Perv of Honor. Among the things I'm going to do I am going to do a Slytherin hazing session where I will cosplay as Draco Malfoy. It's year 8. Everyone's back at Hogwarts to finish their actual educations instead of tramping around, having a war and whatnot. And of course, in the new spirit of magical cooperation, everyone gets to pledge what house they want to be in. And this is essentially Draco hazing potential new Slytherin prefects. So yes, so come bring your wands and get hazed by me. It's going to be lots of fun. And I'm also giving a reading and doing some things myself. But they were like, "What do you want to do? That's fun." And I'm like, "I'm going to do this." I am evil. I know. Let's see. And yes, please cosplay if you can. But yeah, ticket sales for Geeky Kink end tomorrow. And the other thing I should say is that they have a pay what you want or pay what you can policy. So I think it's a sliding scale from $50 to $75 for the whole weekend. But if you can't even afford $50, they're basically like, you decide what you want to register for, what you can afford. So that's really cool. So they're like, New England's economy is a little rough. Give this a try, try our event, and so I think that's a really nice thing. And then first Monday of September, which is Labor Day, I guess, I will be at the Middle East for Bear True Stories of Love and Romance, Love, Sex, and Desire, I guess it is, and I'll be at Writers with Drinks in September in San Francisco on September 14th. So I will see you all around the internet. Thank you so much for spending the evening with me. Thanks for celebrating the release of Slow Surrender. I am beyond thrilled that the book is out in the world and so many people are reading it. It's fantastic. Thanks a lot. Goodbye, everyone.